CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, here at CHEK News. This week, a slightly different format. The panel is available in the audio podcast. We have a special guest this week. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to get right to it. We have a wide-ranging interview with the 38th Premier of the province, Premier David Eby, who just took office a couple of weeks ago. Premier, thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Rob.
You have said that you wanted to hit the ground running, and I have to have observed that it's more like a sprint. You are at a blistering pace right now with announcements every weekend, almost every day. Why are you moving so quickly? Explain this pace to us.
Well, British Columbians, there's certainly a recognition of the work that our government has done under Premier Horgan over the last 5 years. But when I was traveling the province in the leadership campaign, I heard urgency from a significant number of people about some core issues, about housing, making sure that everyone has a decent place to live that they can actually afford, around health care, that people get the care they need when they need it, around public safety, concern about the safety of the people struggling with mental health and addiction in our streets, but also the feeling that downtown cores just aren't as safe as they were before the pandemic, and around making sure our economy is going to be weathering the headwinds that are coming due to the global trends we're seeing right now. So on those key issues, they want to see fast action from us. They want to see more, and that's been the theme of those announcements.
You've mentioned visible progress on those files. So is that at the end of this 100-day period, people will see visible improvement in tent encampments and in healthcare and in public safety and in affordability in housing? Is that your goal?
Yeah, my goal is that British Columbians will see from our government results that touch their lives, that they can see, that they can feel, that are very real for them. So from announcing early right off the hop, supports for families around affordability, reducing costs for them around BC Hydro and a credit for middle and low income families, really important stuff. And I don't think British Columbians think that we're going to solve every issue over the next 2 years leading up to the next election, but they want to know where we're going and they want to see progress in that direction. And I want to see that too. That's a big priority for me and for our whole government.
What do you say to the flip side of this, people watching this pace and saying, wait a second, you were in government for 5 years, you were a senior minister for 5 years, how come none of these things happened then? Why are they all happening now?
Well, I think many people saw the impact of the global pandemic on British Columbia and, of course, the entire world. The impacts of the atmospheric river, the climate disasters we've seen, the burning down of the town of Lytton. This has been a remarkably eventful period in British Columbia's history. And our government has been responding to that, as well as doing things like rolling out a child care program, the first new social program in a generation. And Premier Horgan has led us through some really challenging times. But that doesn't mean those other issues, those priorities for British Columbians go away, that British Columbians need a decent place to live that they can actually afford, and they need that health care when they're ill, when they're in crisis, and they need a family doctor to support them. So we have to be able to respond to these challenges as they come up and also move forward on addressing those emerging issues coming out of the pandemic that are so front and center for people in the province right now.
I'm sure the opposition will say and has said that this government's been in power for half a decade. How come it's making all these changes now, though? Did it not achieve what it wanted during the first 5 years? Or this kind of radical change we don't normally see with a government that just is remaining the same party in power?
Well, I don't think there's been a radical shift. I mean, when you're talking about the big focus of government, I think when you're looking at what we've done around a massive capital expansion of hospitals, new hospitals across the province, making sure that we're seismically upgrading our schools and that the education system is working the way it should, the child care program. I mean, there's so many initiatives we've rolled out to make life better for British Columbians, but the work doesn't stop. I mean, issues come up. Things need to be dealt with in the province. When we were sworn in, I sure didn't imagine we'd be going through a global pandemic and the kinds of climate disasters we've seen washing out major highways through the mountains. These are remarkable things, and so we need to respond to those and continue making sure the province is secure, especially looking at the global situation right now and rising costs for British Columbians. How can we support British Columbians through these challenging times, make sure that this is a secure place for them to live.
Let's talk election for a second. You have said several times you don't intend to call an early election. Let's canvass that issue again. Is it your intention to not hold an early election and stick with that October 2024 fixed election date?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of British Columbians, and not one has said, you know what I really would like right now from the government is a provincial election. We have a mandate from British Columbians to do the work that we're doing, to deliver for them on these essential public services, to build a strong economy for everybody, and to address the issue of housing. And we have 2 years left in our mandate to do that work. I am really excited about getting to work with British Columbians and making sure that we're coordinating and delivering together in partnership. An election is not the priority of British Columbians right now, and their priorities are my priorities.
Just to narrow that down a little bit, though, let's just do yes or no. Is it your intention to stick with the fixed election date?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, so you're not planning on considering an early election?
No, I'm not.
Even though there is some political calculus that would suggest you've got a lot of money to spend in the budget right now, $6 to $10 billion in different funds. You've got your 100-day plan coming up. Some people wonder if there's a political argument to going early for you, from a pure strategy point of view.
Yeah, I think the mistake would be to think about the job that I have, the job that my colleagues have, as being one of political strategy. That's not the job that we have. The job that we have is to deliver for British Columbians and on their key priorities. That's what they've sent us to Victoria to do, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay, let's talk about Vancouver Island for a bit. A lot of our viewers obviously here on the island. What do you see as the future of the island?
Well, the island's in a really exciting time. People will know and they'll have seen in their communities population growth. We added 100,000 people to our province last year. We're going to set another record for growth this year, and we're certainly seeing it in communities across the island. There are challenges that come with the growth, though, and making sure it's sustainable for Vancouver Island. Challenges around transportation, around healthcare and schools. So making sure we're supporting fast-growing communities on the island with the supports that people need and the amenities that they expect in their communities is going to be really important. And also tourism is so important for Vancouver Island communities. Many of them dependent on tourists, and supporting that continuing recovery coming out of the pandemic to build that part of the island economy is really important. And then lastly, agriculture, supporting the island around issues of food security, I know is a great priority for people here as well. So there's lots for us to do together in Vancouver Island to build on the success that we've seen and the quick growth that's happening out here as people move here for the kind of life that they want to build for themselves and their families.
We have the same sort of healthcare problems that a lot of communities are facing. The Port Hardy ER has been closed for most of the last 2 months almost, and the Port McNeill ER continues to go up and down as well. I know your wife Kaylee, who's a family doctor, has done some work in the North Island. What are you planning on doing to kind of help those emergency rooms in smaller communities that are chronically closed?
Yeah, I do have that helpful advice at home from my
expertise.
My wife, expertise, absolutely, from my wife, who used to be a nurse, practiced in rural areas, and is now a family doctor. Our whole family spent time in Port McNeill. She worked in the health center there. It was an eye opener for me to hear about her experience in a rural health center. And one of the announcements we made just last weekend was about how about tripling the size of the program we have, where doctors that have experience in other countries, when they come here, that they can be assessed and get the training they need and deliver services across the province. There'll be 90 doctors a year going through that program within the next 2 years. And then those doctors do something called return of service, where they work in underserved communities, making sure that those doctors that have the skills, but the credentials are not recognized, that they're able to get to work on the front lines. This is what's going to make the difference in so many communities across the province. We need folks in those positions now, and that is the fastest available pool of health workers that we have, is people with those international experiences.
How quickly could someone in Port Hardy or Port McNeill or another community in BC see a change with that?
So there's 3 separate programs that were announced on the weekend about getting doctors fast-tracked that have international education, training, or experience. We've got a similar program around nurses. It's been close work with the colleges that govern both of those professions. So our goal is to get those health workers into community as quickly as possible and to actively recruit them, to encourage them to move to British Columbia and choose British Columbia. And you'll have seen the family doctor deal that Minister Adrian Dix did to encourage people to move into that, it's called longitudinal family practice, but it's like being the family doctor that people need, that they have that relationship with in the healthcare system, to incent them to do that kind of work. Because before that, it was all about encouraging them through how they got paid and what they had to do to work at drop-in centers or work in a hospital instead.
Mm-hmm. On public safety, which is another key priority of yours, you've mentioned taking a leadership role in the downtown east side in Vancouver, a number of repeat offender programs and funding announcements for more RCMP officers. In Victoria, which the Vancouver police chief has described as kind of a mini version of what's happening in Vancouver, do you think the province will play a similar leadership role, or how does Victoria begin to address a smaller but comparatively large for this city problem that is similar to Vancouver?
Yeah, I think the goal that everybody has is to avoid encampments, street disorder becoming entrenched. And so intervening early, making sure that there are supports in place, but also making sure that there are minimum expectations around behavior, around violent offenses and so on, that police have the resources they need, that social workers and peer workers have the resources they need to go in and intervene when someone is in crisis before it spirals into a criminal offense. This is the work that we have to do. It's linked to housing, mental health, and addiction, and these are going to be key priorities. These issues around street disorder in communities, they look the same in Victoria, downtown east side, Terrace, Trail, other communities, but often the reasons for those issues are quite different and the size of the issue. So we'll be working closely with communities across the province to design responses that make sense for those local communities to address these issues. We're not going to let them linger. We'll be working with local leaders on those issues.
But does Victoria need that same provincial leadership as Vancouver, or is it different?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, the CRD faces similar. I mean, as I said, there are different challenges than the downtown east side. Downtown east side has been many decades in the making. Victoria, it feels like a chance to intervene earlier to prevent that from becoming entrenched, to provide the supports that are necessary, but also really deal with the fact that the core reasons why people are sleeping on the sidewalk, why they're not taking up offers of housing, why they're struggling outside in very visible ways. And we can build that trust and we can address those issues, but only together with police, with service providers, with municipality. And we'll do that in Victoria as well.
But not taking it over, as the phrase was used for Vancouver. It's not the same for Victoria. You're not considering that same thing.
Well, I think the province has to bottom line this. The issues are too big for the city to deal with on its own when it comes to Victoria's challenges or Terrace's challenges. Municipal governments have some tools, but only some. The province has the ability to coordinate those municipal tools that are available, the police tools that they have, the nonprofit agencies, as well as funding streams that'll help bring it all together. We're going to have to play a coordinating role in cities, including Victoria.
On affordability, you've got a lot of money in the budget right now, which the finance minister is talking about maybe being one time. So I'm wondering, A, how you look at spending that, given that a lot of government changes bake in amounts for future years, and we're not sure if this money is sticking around. And B, are you considering any more sort of direct rebate type of payments? The affordability benefit that you've already announced, or there's a hydro benefit, there was an ICBC rebate. Can British Columbians expect more of those using that money, or how do you intend to kind of use it, do you think?
What British Columbians should expect around all of our provincial programs, whether they're programs to build things or whether they're programs to deliver services to people, is that they're aimed at building the long-term capacity of the province. So we do have those short-term responses to support families in crisis around affordability, rising costs that they're seeing. But we also need to recognize our province is growing really quickly, and that's putting pressure on schools, on healthcare, on other public services, but also the quality of life in fast-growing communities, the trails, the swimming pools, the arenas, those kinds of things that make strong communities. So people are going to see investments that build up the strength of our province and put us in good position given the global headwinds we're looking at around the economy.
Maybe some cash back too, maybe?
Well, certainly, yeah, supports for families absolutely will continue to be a priority for us. We're seeing the impact that rising food costs have on food security for people, the fact that they just can't afford, they're choosing between rent and groceries. These are unacceptable positions that they're put in. So we'll provide those supports to folks in the province, absolutely, but we'll do it in a way that builds our long-term our long-term strength as a province as well.
Give us a preview or a hint or juicy gossip on your cabinet, which I know is coming up soon. Premiers have to balance so many different considerations in cabinet. You have a gender-balanced cabinet. You have geographic considerations. You're going to have MLAs who may or may not be running again, all sorts of different things on your mind. How do you go about constructing this cabinet that we're going to see from you very soon?
Yeah, it's really important. I'm in a really fortunate position as the leader of our caucus that, when I look at our team, we've got people from all across the province, all different backgrounds and experiences. We have people from tech. We have people who have been in agriculture or still farming. We have people who have been in labor. We have people who have started businesses and everything in between. And so we have the ability to compile a cabinet that is representative of British Columbia as a whole, something that John helped build for us. And I'm able to benefit from and assembling a group of people that'll be able to respond to these issues and bring their experiences and their ability to connect with community, with leaders in different sectors, with First Nations, so that we can deliver the kind of province that all British Columbians want.
How much change can people expect? We have some ministers that have been in one portfolio for 5+ years now, and a kind of a general ministry structure. Are we looking at new ministries, much like the Ministry of Housing that you've announced? And how significant would you describe this cabinet change, do you think?
Well, what I'm looking at is making sure that we're able to deliver on those priorities that I outlined for British Columbians. We will have a freestanding Ministry of Housing to recognize the importance of that issue for British Columbians, so that there's somebody focused on delivering on housing for British Columbians, and not just for the poorest of the poor, but for middle-income families as well, that they can actually find a future in British Columbia where they have attainable housing. And looking at, and in particular, making sure that we're well coordinated in responding to evolving issues. So coming out of the atmospheric rivers, for example, coming out of some of the climate emergencies that we've seen, making sure we're prepared for future climate impacts or other emergencies, that we have the best lessons learned, and that has a focus at the cabinet level as well. So there's lots of areas for us to shift emphasis, and I think British Columbians will be really happy with the team we assemble and the structure we set up. Because it's set up to deliver the goals and priorities that they have about a safe, secure home for themselves and their families.
Tell Islanders and British Columbians a bit about yourself and why you wanted this job. People have been assuming you were going to become Premier for quite a while now, and I don't know if that was always in your mind, that you really wanted this job, if you set out at some point to do this, or why really kind of reach for this job when John Horgan announced he was going to retire? What was it that motivated you to do it?
Well, I think most of your viewers will know that John left because of personal health decisions and for his family, and so the timing of his departure was earlier than any of us would have wanted. For myself, I had a conversation with Kaylee, with my wife, about what my next steps would be and what our plans were, and to be honest, I didn't really see this step as being in my future. I was kind of like, well, I'm doing a lot of the things I like to do, and I enjoy working with John. But then when John stepped down, it really forced the decision. So we checked in as a family, and our lives really changed. When our son Ezra was born, when our daughter Iva was born, our priorities and making sure that we're building the kind of province that'll be a good one for them and for their friends and their friends' families or grandparents. Continuing the work that we've been doing, expanding on that work and delivering for British Columbians. I was really excited to have the support of my colleagues to do that, and I'm happy to take it on, and I'm excited about where we can go as a province.
Was it a tough decision to put your family in more of a public spotlight, given this day and age and the vitriol that politicians often face in public life?
Yeah, it's something that's on my mind. We're not at school with Ez, who's 8, and kids are kind of coming online in terms of looking around at the larger world, and so I'm not there when the older kids talk to him about who his dad is or whatever whatever might happen on the playground. So it was definitely on my mind. But we're also a bit fortunate that they're not on social media, they're not on the internet, and so a lot of this will be over their heads right now. And so it's part of the calculus, and the whole family feels the impact, but it's not that different from many British Columbians who are trying to balance work and family life. If someone has to be away for work for a while to support the family, these are decisions British Columbians have to make. Our family's not unique in that way, but it is a different kind of job for sure.
I've had the chance to profile you a couple times, once you dragged me to hot yoga.
Yes, that's right.
Thank goodness no one took any pictures of that.
Yeah.
And also, I happen to have seen you in a tiara having a tea party with Iva, who is 3.
That's right.
This side of you as a dad, as kind of a little bit goofy, you've got a very good sense of humor to you. How does the public see that? How do you portray that to them? I think they've come to know you as a tall guy in a suit who talks about auto insurance and transnational money laundering, but maybe doesn't quite see the full scope of you. How do you plan on introducing yourself to them?
Yeah, it is getting to know British Columbians in a different way, and it's about opening up our home and showing British Columbians we're not different from the realities that they face in their own lives, and we still have those kinds of day-to-day moments where I'm having a tea party with my daughter at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's just life at our house. So it's important for people to know where we come from, what our values are, what our backgrounds are, and what our priorities are. Because I think and I hope that British Columbians see a bit of themselves in us, and because their priorities and what they want for their families is what I want to deliver for them.
It's a tough act to follow, though, John Horgan. Consistently, probably the most popular premier in 50 years throughout his entire term. Those are big shoes to fill. You're a big guy, but big popularity shoes to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I was co-chair of his leadership campaign. I saw his potential early, I like to believe. But to be honest, he just far and away exceeded any of my wildest hopes. He transformed the NDP and people's understandings of what our party is and what we do. And so I'm very grateful to him. I said in my speech on being sworn in that I was standing on his shoulders, and it's absolutely true. And many other people who helped get us to this place. So I'm working hard to deliver for British Columbians so that they continue to know that the NDP is on their side.
Thank you so much for being with us here, and thanks for your time.
Great, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
That was Premier David Eby speaking to us on a wide variety of issues that we will continue to break down each and every week on Political Capital. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast for your podcast feed. It's available on the CHEK Plus app and on YouTube, and obviously here on CHEK Television. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week with all the latest on Political Capital.